Sarah was blind. And then
Yes.
up north, where we lived on Whaley's place, she was there was a room that had curtains.
Double
Double,
doors.
yeah, double doors that made it, what's that?
Creton.
No.
Oh.
Don't you remember Mother and Bird?
Yeah.
Well, anyway, that's making errors. But she was in bed, and us kids would take that curtain and throw it on the bed, and she'd holler at Grandpa Sales. She thought he was doing it. So, of course, we got. Did you remember doing that?
Yeah.
I do too.
She
Yeah,
always,
definitely.
and she just said,
Mart.
she called him Mart. Mart. What are
Yeah.
you doing? Because it wasn't Grandpa at all, it was us kids.
Yeah,
But
throw that
that
curtain.
living room was
laying
off
like
as a
that.
bedroom
Yeah.
on the south side of the
Well,
house.
who all lived there?
Everybody.
Your whole family, and then
Uncle John, and then Walter Morris was the hired man, and he was with Dad before he got married. He was there till he died. Well, I don't know where he died.
No, he didn't die there, but he
No,
he was
would
with
come to
Dad a long
Flanders.
time.
Yeah.
but you all lived in that house. And this was
this is
John
when
at
Richard
this
was
age?
born. This was from the time they got married till Richard was born.
So this is, what year did they get married?
1919.
1919?
So they were married
His mother was
17
19
years.
and he was 35, wasn't he?
Hmm?
He was 35, mother's 19, wasn't he? I know mother's 19. She married.
Okay,
born
he was
1900.
14 years
And
old,
then she-
wasn't he?
Do you,
That was
do you know
died
how,
when
do you
she-
know how they met when there was that much of an age difference?
Yes.
Scribbins.
We met at Charlie Scrivens down here, a couple, 3-4 miles south of here. And Dad and Grandpa, I don't know what farm Dad and Grandpa lived on then. They moved to South Dakota. And I don't know what farm they lived on. And they knew Charlie and Nell Scriven. And Mother came home with Thelma from school. She went to school in Redfield.
Emma was a Scribbin.
Yeah, she was a Scriven. And Dad met her. They knew each other 3 months. They were married.
Really? So
That's
she
why I
was,
say you got
she was in
letters
post
on
high
them.
school? In 19, she was in something beyond high school?
She never went clear through.
Oh,
She went to academy out there.
but that was like a high school then.
Yeah, Seventh Adventist. She went there, and I don't know how she ended up there, unless it was Ma that had been converted. I have no idea how she went out there.
I suppose whether or not your dad ever had any type of a romance that could have led to something previous to that, you have no idea.
Well, it's many things, what Dad always said, things were better to go to the grave.
Yeah.
So you just ask something.
I don't
So
think
in other
he ever
words, it
had
was-
a girl. How could he have a girl? He kept Grandpa's Uncle Wally then was gone, and I don't know how he could even get acquainted with
Well,
anybody.
he didn't
Chased
stay
him
long
out to
enough.
Colorado.
I was gonna say, he didn't stay in one spot long
No,
enough.
he didn't stay in one spot long enough, and he came to South Dakota. What was he, about 4? And I never heard anything about his early life at all. Only he and Grandpa went out to Colorado, and they couldn't make a go of it, so they came back. And by that time, I don't know what Uncle Wally was doing, but they settled here. And Uncle George Bowden was here. So I don't know any more
What-
than that.
Tell us a little bit about your mom.
Didn't know her very long, did we?
No, he didn't.
She was a mother, and never what we would call a friend. She was just a mother. You did what you were told to do.
Was that typical then? More typical?
I don't know.
I remember most about, she always walked around. Dad always liked somebody around when they were doing chores. He liked somebody. You couldn't carry a pail. I don't care how late it was. You couldn't do that, but you just walk with him.
Keep them company?
Yeah, and Mother always did that. She would out.
Yeah,
walk
in
with
the
him
evening.
in
I
the
remember
evening,
that.
yeah. And he did that after Mother was gone. I don't know if you want to walk with him while they
Yeah.
carried things, but you couldn't even take the empty
Usually,
pail. You
when I went out there, I suppose you did too. Whenever I went home, we walked out to see the cattle and the pigs and
Mhm, just like to have you
just,
along.
I
So
don't know.
how old was she then? How old were you when she died?
She was 36.
I just had turned 17.
Well, then you had her for a while. I mean, you
Yeah, but
were able to
not-
have more of an adult relationship,
Well,
not just a little kid.
As far as dating and all those kind of things, no, I didn't know my mother as far as what boys you should go with or anything like that. We just knew her as what we should do, dust for one thing. That was my job to dust. I hate it to this day. And the other day
I can tell by looking around you.
yeah, I talked to both girls. I talked to Janie first, and I said, I've got everything done but the dusting. It was a week ago today. I got everything done but the dusting. And I said, you can do that. Oh, she said, you made us do it every day. And I said, I did not. And she said, you did too. Every day Kathleen and I had to dust. And I said, no, you didn't. I called up Kathleen. And I tell her, I got everything done with the dusting. You made us dust every day.
I think I trust Kathy
did
and Janie on this
not.
one.
I couldn't believe those girls.
Well, what would you say? What is it, weekly? You made them do it, or
Huh?
never?
Oh, just a chore I did. What'd you have to do?
I don't remember doing anything. Did I do anything?
I don't remember much about the farm and the Whaley place, really, to tell you the truth. I know,
We had a hired girl all the time besides everybody else.
yeah.
Lily Galeston was a hired girl, and she would live there and baked a cake every day.
Well,
There's so many people
yeah.
just would
And
be
we baked
gone.
bread about 3 times a week and had about 6 loaves at a time, you know, because there's so many of us with Grandpa. Uncle John wasn't there then. He just spent the summers with us. They come up for the summer sometime. But Grandpa Sales was always there. And a hired, like Beth had said, a hired man, a hired girl, mother and dad, and 4 kids or whatever they were.
So do you remember much about the relationship between Grandpa Roy and your mom? Did they seem to
Oh,
laugh?
they
Did
never
they go
had
out
a fight.
dancing?
He said more than once they never had a fight. He told me that when he's in the hospital.
That's
Those
how we
days.
got that. I didn't realize that. That's
You know,
how
Mom-
we inherited that. didn't we?
I didn't inherit it.
Well, it's all right. Put it on there.
Let's not fight.
I think it'd be good to put that on
No,
the
but,
file.
but they always got along.
Always did.
They
that.
always got
I
along.
don't ever remember anybody yelling at anybody.
Oh, Mom.
To be honest, truth.
I don't either.
Our mom, I remember her saying that they never raised their voices
No,
to each other
uh-uh.
once.
I
I don't
just
know where my mom got it.
She got it from your dad.
I remember when Richard.
Dad was much of a disciplinarian. Of course, Jim, he was just a free spirit. I always said he was a free spirit. But
So get
Dad could not. He wasn't a disciplinarian at all. After Mother died, how many hired girls did we have?
Well,
I have
anybody-
no idea.
Maybe your mother said the same thing, but you know, get a hired girl, a hired woman. I don't remember anybody girl. Well, we did have
Yeah.
girls too. If they did one thing we didn't like, we told Dad, out she went.
Really?
He always is on our side. Don't make any difference what.
That wasn't any good either.
No, but that's what happened.
That's the way it was.
Yeah. I don't know how many we had there.
Now finally it ended up that I can remember washing clothes and reading a book, and it took me all day. It's the most disgusting thing I ever heard of.
when you were sitting around on a Sunday afternoon, were there games? What did you do as a family?
We went to town every other Saturday night.
Yeah. I got to go one night and she took care of Jim and she got to go and I took care of Jim.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I
I
can
don't
remember.
remember playing any games.
No, we never did. I remember,
Cards, never had deck cards in the house, I know.
and you never touched Grandpa's cards. He had them in a drawer. He had a
We
little
didn't get to
desk
do
and he had a drawer here, and that drawer was his, and he wrote to his family. Grandpa was a good letter writer, and he wrote to Aunt Ethel and Aunt Mabel and all of them. His writing paper were in the, and it with ink and pen, and his cards were in there. But Grandpa was the only one that played the cards. And I don't remember seeing Dad play cards. They moved over to Flanders. Do you?
I never saw him playing at home anytime.
Yeah, Grandpa could pull this drawer out and it had a cover on it, and he could play solitaire on that. That was Grandpa did that. I remember that. And I know on that table sat the.
Now, are you talking your grandpa or our grandpa?
No, that's
our
Grandpa
grandpa.
Sayers,
Your grandpa.
Grandpa Martin. And I remember when we got the first radio, plain as day, we had to be quiet as mice because we listened to Lowell Thomas, 4 to 6, Amos and Andy at 6. And after that, I don't know.
First radio I ever heard, we were over to Peterson, Mike
Yeah,
Peterson's, and they had earphones.
In the
And they'd take
election,
turns listening
Oh,
to the
really?
election
Yeah.
returns.
So
And
that
that's-
would have been
in the 30s.
30s?
That was Roosevelt, I think. Was it Roosevelt?
I don't
That's-
know.
Do you remember fireside chats?
No, I don't remember those. I remember Grandpa was a staunch Democrat. And if Grandpa was a little bit down, I can remember this, sitting at the supper table, if Grandpa was a little bit down, Dad would get on him about the Democrats, and of course, Dad would take the opposite side to make him, and Grandpa would perk right up.
Well, that's what they did with Cora Halder too.
Yeah.
They'd have her come over if he was feeling down. I remember going to bed down to the Whaley place, and I think it was up Whaley. No, it might have been over Flanders. Anyway, Grandpa was, I'm dying, Roy, I'm dying. He was yelling, and we'd go down and get Dad and say, Grandpa's dying, get up there. I can still hear him say, Dad, quit doing that, you're scaring the girls to death. And said, there's nothing there, and of course he didn't die.
So go through the kids and just tell tell just a memory of your siblings. Something fun that,
What are you gonna say? I say ditto.
No, I can't think, I'm thinking of what you said. The
Well, you can
kids-
think
when
about it in
Richard-
a second. What Uncle, Grandpa Martin's wife was,
Aunt Rose
Rosetta.
and she
Rosetta
lived there too.
Belden. Oh no, she died when I was born.
Oh, she
She
died,
died
okay.
3 months after I was born.
And so were they all farming, these people, when they lived here?
Oh yeah.
And none of these people ever had any service connection? I mean, back where they ended up
No,
going to
uh-uh.
service, none of them,
Uncle Wally lived in town,
you know?
They
and
didn't go to service, you mean due to war, is
Yeah.
that what you're thinking? No, I
Or,
don't-
No,
or
we had
even,
nobody that
or
was
even
in the war that I
peacetime
know of.
situation or anything. Oh, okay.
Richard and Jim were the only two in the service.
so did farmers not, World War One, our grandpa didn't have to go because he's a farmer?
Well, I suppose that my dad was too old. No, let's see, Dad, yeah, he was too old because the war ended in 1918 and they were married in 1919 and he
was already
sporting
35.
grandpa.
Yeah.
I don't know how that draft
I don't
was
know.
in.
I
have
don't
no
think
idea.
they had a draft. Did
I
they have a
don't
draft?
think the draft actually came till later.
I don't know if they
Until
did
the
either.
Second World War.
So-
Were there any church, was there much church going back then?
Never.
But your mom was a Seventh-day Adventist and you,
Yeah, she was.
I didn't ever do that.
She was.
but, so, when did that start become interest to you? I mean, you know, they never went, huh?
No.
Never was mentioned. No.
So how?
Well,
how did-
Aunt Laura and Ma took us to Sabbath school when we were kids.
Most miserable time of our life, we'd go and stay, not that, I mean, we'd go to their house, and have nothing, no fun. Aunt Laura was fun, but Ma
Yeah,
was,
and she was.
she'd lock us out if we went outside later than, she lived right in Coleman.
She had that bad temper. She had a bad temper. She was pure German from Middle Out.
I don't
This
think
was
she wanted
found out?
Aunt Laura to go
This
with
is
it.
this is Grandpa Frank's second wife.
Oh.
Aunt Laura was mother's stepsister, but mother and Uncle Dewey had a
Half-sister.
different mother.
You know, the half sister.
Yes, half sister.
Mm-hmm.
Uncle Dewey and mother had Ella Bentley for a mother, and we never knew her, of course, because we only knew this Ma, we called her.
Well, she died when mother was little young.
Yeah, she died when mother was about 9 because
Yeah.
before that I think, Betsy, because I heard mother say that Ma made her mixed bread on a chair when she was 9 years old.
Wasn't she a hired girl, Ma was?
Yes,
And that's how
Think
they.
Grandpa Frank lived in-
married her.
Montana.
So what were holidays like? A Christmas or a Thanksgiving? Were there big meals? Did family come?
We were just our family. All I remember at Christmas, the most delightful thing was that Santa Claus always, always sent his packages ahead because he couldn't carry everything in the sleigh because we'd get these packages in the mail and we thought, why do we have those? Mother always put them upstairs in that closet out there and locked the door. You couldn't get in there. Santa Claus would open those when you got there. He'd just send them ahead of time. And so then, and the Christmas tree was always put up Christmas Eve after we all went to bed too. And I can still see coming down the stair steps with our lamp and
Yeah.
the Christmas trees, those icicles, those beautiful
Sitting on
things
the
that they
table,
ever saw.
sitting on the table.
Always a little one. It wasn't a big one that I ever remember anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then we had Christmas dinner, and we did have some with Ma and Aunt Laura and them, but I don't know if anybody else was ever there. Do you remember?
I don't remember either. I do know that they dressed geese on the kitchen table. Do you
for
remember that?
Christmas goose,
Yeah, we had a Christmas goose. We never had turkey. You dress them yourself then, I suppose. I suppose
Well,
you
we
could
didn't
buy-
raise turkeys, probably
No.
why. We
We had
lived
goose.
off the land, and then when Uncle Scott died that one year, well, that would be Aunt
When Richard
Ethel.
was born,
It would be
No.
Dad's sister.
Huh? We,
Dad's sister, you know, when he died, it was right about Christmas time. And Aunt Ethel didn't have enough money to bring his body home, so Dad took that bill. And then, so Christmas time, they said, you can have one thing, Mother said, you can have a gift or a candy. And we all picked the candy. And that's something nowadays, she said.
in one, maybe that
But
was
we
the
got a
same
gift.
year.
But we got a
I
gift.
got an apron. What'd you get?
Doll dresses.
Did you?
I gave
Now,
them
would you
some
say
of
that you were a typical farm family in terms of the things you had? I don't want to call it wealth,
I
but
think-
were you middle income kind of farmers?
I
We probably
think-
didn't have as much as Blanche Whaley had, did we?
I don't know,
Or-
because we have
or-
always seemed like
I
we
never
helped
thought about
everybody
that,
else out.
Mark. I
But
don't
you,
know.
you you didn't feel left out. You feel like you like everybody else.
This table is the same table.
Oh, really?
Is it?
Yeah, sure.
So, when did
Cheers,
you talk about some? If you didn't have stories on your sisters and brothers, but talk a little bit about the when they got married and you met the uncles and aunts, our
Before
uncles
we
and
get
aunts.
there, I tell you about Richard when he was born. See, How old were we when Richard was? He was born in 29.
I would have been 9 years old.
Yeah. And we had no idea we were expecting a baby. We were sent to Aunt Ethel's and up north.
Madison.
Yeah. Wasn't it further? Was it just Madison?
Yeah.
It seemed like it was further than that.
Yeah.
Anyhow, we got
So
we
many
were
flat
vis-
tires in
we
between.
were visiting them, and finally they got a telephone call and it'd be your brother. We just had no idea. Anyhow, for this old Model T, we were coming home in with this guy did one flat tire after the other. I thought we'd never get to Coleman to see. And then we, I remember we all, kids got in there, and I can remember Mother said, oh, you know what I'd love to have is a bouquet of flowers. Down in the meadow, they had tiger lilies. That's the only thing I remember is tiger lilies, maybe something else. And we were so glad to go gather one. Now I could see she couldn't stand us all, driving her nuts. I thought she wanted those, but she did act like she wanted them.
She was
I
a
think
smart
she
woman.
did.
Yeah.
Do you remember when Uncle Jimmy was born then?
Yeah.
Did you know that was coming?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I remember that. I remember wearing that apron with the crisscross.
Yeah. He was born in town.
Mrs. Burdick.
Yeah, Mrs. Burdick's, yes. I remember that. And I remember she was sick at the time.
What,
remember-
what cancer?
Yeah.
Where's Mrs. Burdick's house in town?
Right there where the church.
You remember the
uh,
Episcopal Church?
The church is
Yeah.
south.
First one south.
Oh, okay. So you were born there.
I don't think that house is even there anymore, is it?
I don't know. I've been,
Was no one was born in a hospital? None of the
I
kids.
was.
She was.
You were.
I was born in Del Rapids.
Dr. Odie, no, Doty, not Odie. Dr. Doty was the doctor that had for me. We got pictures up to the senior citizens of his car, his house.
Well,
and stuff.
Dr. Doty was supposed to deliver Jean and didn't get there in time. That's why, that's what we think started the cancer. I'm not sure.
Well, she got torn real bad.
Yeah, and she was not supposed to have any more children, and she's had more, of course. And so,
Did they tell him that day, that time, that they shouldn't?
well,
have
we
any
never
more?
learned that till later.
Oh, that's all.
But I think she was told not to have any
Yeah.
more children.
I didn't even know Dr. Doty was an alcoholic until.
I didn't know that either, but he didn't come in time anyhow. That's I don't remember a thing about your mother. Not one thing about Faye being born. All I know is that Dad, Aunt Ethel called her Pudgy, and I don't know. I don't
Ethel was
remember.
there a lot of times.
Huh?
Aunt
Oh, Aunt
was
Ethel came a
there.
lot, yeah.
Now, why would anyone make up a nickname like Pudgy or Stubby for a kid? We just made the kid feel bad.
That's what I wanted to call you, Stub, when you came to the door, but I
I don't
held
think
my
Faye was
tongue.
ever pudgy though, really, was she?
Aunt Ethel called her that.
Yeah, I know it, but
I know we
remember
never
that.
called her.
No, but she didn't, I didn't remember her being pudgy either. Was she at one time? I don't remember that. I
She
mean,
wasn't as, I don't remember Beth. like
Now,
that.
did the four girls? Did you pal around? Or was there too much age
We
difference?
were
Did
all
you have?
this age difference, there's 4 girls in 5
the
years.
big
Oh,
girls
was it
and
that
little
much?
girls.
Big
And
girls
we
and
had-
little
we
girls.
both had 2 beds in one room and life size stuff together, didn't we?
Jean and Faye.
Yeah, that's the way.
And did
right.
you get along as kids?
Yeah.
Or was it?
I don't
I
remember.
don't
do
remember
you?
fighting with anybody, you?
No.
I don't think.
I think-
we were fighting with
All
anybody.
I ever got reprimanded for was being sassy, and I suppose I still am.
And who would reprimand you?
More, huh?
Who reprimanded you?
My dad. I remember once he was really upset. When out in the Hoyle place, I must have been in the 8th grade, and I must have been a little lippy then too.
Did you live out there in 8th grade? What'd you?
We moved, I
Seventh grade,
finished the
weren't
7th grade here in Hoyle School, and then started the 8th grade in
Flanders.
Flanders.
Did you, Mom used to once in a while mention going to the Crystal Theater. I mean, didn't you
Oh,
go to
yeah.
the theaters? I mean,
No.
did- Huh?
No, we didn't go to shows. Mother didn't. Mother really didn't follow us for shows.
Hmm.
When I got to be in Flandreau, one of the first shows I ever saw, I suppose, was with George O'Brien in a western.
Well, I can remember
Margie
Margie,
went.
Margie, because then she'd go up to Raleigh, Raleigh.
Oh, Mister
Raleigh, what's his last name?
Matson,
Matson. And she'd say,
P.R. Matson.
I was there last night. Can we go back in and see it again? Well, she hadn't been there last night, but.
If you went once, you're supposed to get in free the next time?
Well,
No.
He'd let her.
He'd let
so
her.
we'd go in. I think
Margie
he-
went to shows.
I'm sure he knew all the time what was here that way, but he was good all the time.
Uncle Antoinette didn't approve of movies either, but Uncle Wally, you could have some. They were a dime. We could get in for until we were in high school. Then it was 35 cents. And we went to a show once in a while with Margie. It was a treat. We never got out. But like I say, every other Saturday night, walk the streets, buy a ring at, what's that? Not Pinnell's, but the guy, Hook,
Yeah, Harley Hook.
Harley Hook. Maybe buy something for a dime, come home.
Did you walk to Flanders often?
No.
No,
Never.
you had a ride.
I never did.
When you ended up, talk about being young marrieds, when all of you guys were married, did you guys do things together as couples then? When,
Sure, we were so poor, we had soup, Campbell's soup, and not Lil Mace, let us buy it by the case. So when she and Kathy came visit us, we had this. When we went to her house, she had the dried soup. I don't know how they got theirs. You should know, you guys don't know. That's what we had at her house.
soup and soup.
And then we came to Flanders, Coleman 2 years after we were married, and we had a garden, and I had lettuce. We had cream, and we had cream and eggs and lettuce and potatoes. A great meal, I'll tell you.
Well,
We had an apple tree. And I learned to cook. Well, I had cooked at home, but then you learn by doing.
So if you were to get together, or with our parents get together, did you go out and do something, go out to eat? Did you go out and play cards? Did you play cards together? What did you do what were social times like?
well,
We didn't have money to go out and eat.
No, never went out.
There was never any money. Everybody went to everybody else's house for a Sunday dinner.
I can't even remember what our meals weren't anything lavish, but I don't know.
Well, we
what
had-
they were.
No, I don't. I think we always had to eat vegetables. We ate what was on our plate. I know that. And Grandpa had a big garden, so we ate what was in the garden.
Which you could never get in the garden. We wanted to get out there because he kept all the weeds out, and we loved it after rain.
And you go
Walk
barefoot
out,
in there.
Get out of there. You could not pack that dirt down. Oh, I can see it now, but I couldn't then.
No,
We
couldn't
feel
go
so
in his
good on our
garden.
bare feet. Wouldn't allow that.
Grandpa raised watermelons, sold them in the fall, and our treat was a new
Must
dinner
be.
bucket. to Take to school.
Oh, really?
He brought each one of us a dinner pail
How long did he live with you?
till he died. And Aunt Jeanette took care of him in these last months that he was alive. He lived with
We used to
Dad.
go to the lake,
Yeah.
Madison, in the summertime, and Grandpa and Uncle John used to fish. So they'd stay out. Must stayed all summer, didn't they, out to Lake Madison? Or a lot of the time, anyhow. And they fished and sat there. So we'd take turns going, and folks would come and see if we were okay, and if we wanted to come home. Oh no, we love to be there. Then after they'd leave, we'd say, oh, I bet they wanted us home, and then we didn't go. We stayed here. Well, now you know. We're tickled to death. Now that I look back. Remember that so plain?
Yeah,
Feeling so
I
bad to
remember that
think
too.
they wanted us and we didn't go.
Grandpa was a great fisherman, and Uncle John just went along, I think, because Grandpa liked it.
And we had a full dress that we wore swimming in.
When did your grandpa die then?
He died in 1940. Grandpa Sales, 1940. He was 92. Uncle John died when I think he was 91, but I don't remember the year, do you?
Mm-mm.
He died a couple of years. I remember getting up that morning and getting ready for school, because I was in high school, and come downstairs, and Dad was sitting by by that dining room stove with his feet up by the stove, and he said, Uncle John died last night. And we never heard him come upstairs and get him or anything. I didn't anyhow.
Mm-mm.
When the mortician came, we never heard him come or anything.
Now we're at Whaley's again?
Yeah. No.
No,
Or you at the other
fine.
place?
Boy, it's an
Right.
awfully small house to think of those older gentlemen there, plus 6 kids, and
And the hired man, the hired girl most of the time. No, Mother and Dad had one meal alone. I heard her say that more than once. They had one meal alone without anybody there.
When Dad was sick and we lived in north part of town there, he said, you could come and live here remember that room downstairs? You could have everything, the bathroom be there, and you could be there. And he said, never live with one of our kids. We never had a time by ourselves. Mother and I never did, he said, and I won't do that to my kids.
interesting, isn't
And
it?
he died in the hospital. And
I remember visiting in the hospital. What do you remember about the Warriors? Do you remember December 7th and what people were thinking?
That's what that book, I should put it, that's really nice that J.B. wrote for college, but it's all about Bud in the war.
Bud is the first one that enlisted, and then
Yeah.
Kenneth and I came to Coleman to live on Grandpa's farm.
I remember the day that Pearl Harbor, we were
I
uptown.
do too.
And Zarski's had a cafe. Do you know any of the Zarskis, Leo and Betty and those? And
Ray? I know, Ray's.
Leanne's folks.
No.
You're
Coleman.
talking about
That's a brother.
That's the guy that did haircuts.
Right.
No, he was in Coleman anyhow, and they had a cafe there, and when war was declared, I can still see the mother, Leona was her name, and she had her hair all fingered waved with stiff, you know, and everything. And anyway, when that broke out, she made all the kids get ready, they'd go get their family picture taken. Because Leo was in the CCC camp to begin with. Was that kind of a
Yeah, it's
Uh,
kids went there to
misbehaved, weren't they?
no.
It wasn't.
It's a lot of kids went there because they didn't have any money and they did at home and they didn't, but they could earn a little money and work for the government, like cleaning out the forest in Black Hills and
Yeah.
doing that
Anyhow,
kind of thing.
He knew
Yep,
he'd
yep.
have to go to the service as long as he was in this.
Yeah.
That's what, I remember that so plain that day.
And Beebe went too. Kenneth's good best friend. He went to CC camp too. It was after he got out of high school.
When did Uncle Bud go to service then?
Then he went after, let's see, in February.
Coast Guard.
What did I do with that book? February, I think it was.
And Kenneth was working on the farms, and so he didn't have to go. And but he did have to get it. His number was 35.
He went to the,
The draft. His draft number was number 35.
he wouldn't have had to go living on the farm anytime. I would think.
No,
But he had
farmers
to.
weren't taken at that time. But he told me a long time afterwards. I wished I'd have gone.
So what was it real difficult during the war? You know, you
Yes.
about food stamps and all this. Talk about that a little bit.
I got mine still in the cedar chest. I got a thing with the food stamps in. Have you got yours yet?
Mhm. You're still living in Oregon.
Saved all that
Grab
stuff.
So how long did you go without seeing Uncle Bud once he left?
I went all over with him as long as he was in the United States. We lived in Ohio and Kentucky and went to West Virginia, and Nancy went with us. Well, you know, it was fun to travel with her because all the soldiers that were on the trains or buses were all so lonesome for their kids, so they entertained her, and she was too.
She was in Bud's ear.
Entertained her all the time, and then when we got moved to West Virginia, well, he was on the Ohio River. They thought that there's so many things people they could blow up on all those little boats that they belonged to private people, and they gave it to the government to use. And he was on some of those, like be about 6 guys to a boat. Now, if something blew up, they couldn't have done a dumb thing now to look at it now, but anyhow, that's what they were doing. So we lived there, but I could never get on the boat. Nancy could. I couldn't, even wouldn't let any women on there. And then when we moved to West Virginia, we just got there, and he got called to go out to sea. And so then packed up our stuff, couldn't get the darn doll in there. So I can still see Nancy saying, "I'll come back and get you, honey." Left the doll laying on the bed. You know? I asked her the other day, we were talking about that, and said, "Do you think we could still get that doll?"
So how'd you travel home?
On the bus,
And
the
you couldn't
train,
just-
whatever.
You couldn't just carry the doll with you.
Well, I probably had a dozen other things, because we, you know, when you live that far away, and every time we come home, we take something back again with us. We lived in
Suitcases.
apartments that were furnished, but you still gathered a lot of things.
So do you remember when Dad and Uncle Flash went to the service?
I remember when your dad went, but I don't remember. It didn't have much to do with Gina Flash. I think about that. I think it was how many 6 years ago yesterday she died.
I've forgotten
It
that.
had
I
much.
had that on
They were
there.
married at
Yeah.
our house. Gina and Flash were.
He just about fainted.
Yeah,
Really?
yeah. Just about went down.
Went outside.
And I know I had dinner for him. At-
Very hot day, wasn't it?
It was
What year was
February.
Oh, it was
February.
What year would that have been? Was it before the war?
We were on Hicks's. No, they were in the war because
They were in the war.
he was Flash had to go. So did your dad. Let's see, I don't remember.
Well, how old is Susie? Let's see, she was born in 30.
Susie and Joe are both 64.
47.
Yeah.
Or 40, yeah,
Yeah,
47.
1947.
Okay.
So 62 coming up. Or 64,
64.
coming up, yeah.
Because they were married in February that year that she was born. You know?
Was it typical for people to be named as you were, so, and not all, but I mean, to use the middle name instead? It seemed like there must have been a method to it, because
Everybody asks me to this day, and I still get things from Nancy Nace. They don't use your name even
I don't think it made any difference to our parents.
I
They
never
named
thought
us what
anything
they
about
wanted
it,
to.
yeah.
But they
Just
called you
whatever
by your
sounded
middle
nicer
name.
together.
Yeah,
Well, just because it's like
Whatever sounded good together.
Nancy Beverly was better than Beverly Nancy to their, and Nancy was Grandpa Harrison's first wife's name, wasn't it? Or who was it? Somebody in the family. And I remember him saying, she ever turns out to be as nice a woman as this Nancy. And I never knew the Nancy, so I can't find out.
I don't know that either.
She did.
But Uncle Wally said it was a nigger's name.
Yeah,
I'll cut that out too.
No, you can say Uncle Wally.
Yeah,
yeah,
all right.
that isn't her either. Yeah, he
Did,
did.
He did.
How far did the boys get through high school?
Richard never went.
Never went to.
I don't think Jim went either.
Were they farming then?
I remember the day that school started. Richard graduated. It was a terrible storm that night, the 8th grade graduation. I do remember that. Kenneth and I were at Albert and Edith's, and we came home and the water was clear in the driveway and up to the running board, and we wondered if we'd get in the house. I remember that as plain as day. Well, then that fall, that very first day of school, I called home and Richard answered the phone, and I never even talked to him. I just sat down and cried
Because he wasn't in school.
because he didn't go.
So what did they do during the high school years? Find a
Was
job?
that pretty common not to go
Raise
to
the
high
devil.
A
school?
lot of people didn't
Yeah.
go.
Dad didn't make him go. He
You know,
didn't.
a lot of people didn't go at those days, or really earlier days, I should say, probably.
No, he-
but didn't go to high school.
He was much younger than I was. And he should have been going.
No, I didn't mean that.
No, I know you
thought
didn't.
You guys both went to high school though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Mom went to Nettleton or wherever,
Yeah.
USD for a little while
Yeah.
before she got homesick. So must have been that women did get some education.
Why?
And my mother was alive when had she lived.
Yeah, everybody's been to school.
They'd have gone. I know. She never gave a. One was supposed to be a missionary, one a nurse, and one I don't know. She had them all of us girls, what we should be doing, and that was her goal. And of course she died. Well, then everything fell apart naturally, and so I knew I couldn't. I didn't feel I could leave home, but I did leave home to get married, which I shouldn't have done. I should have gotten married, but not left home. As I think back.
Yeah, it's tough to relive those decisions.
Oh,
Oh, how long was our grandma, your mom, ill before she passed away?
Mother was sick when Jim was born, and he was born in July, and she died the next April. She might have been sick before then, but we didn't know it.
What is the date today? 28th?
Yeah,
That's the day
Today.
she was buried.
today is
Terrible storm.
Really?
when she
On the
died.
day?
Oh, terrible storm!
Yeah,
She
she died
died.
the 24th, and the grandpa sales is up to Minnesota, Gladys's, I think it was.
Yeah,
And they couldn't get down that day. They had to wait another day.
So 75 years ago this week.
yeah.
Isn't that something?
I follow that too.
First thing I remember, Antler and Ma took us to town because we had to have a hat to wear at the funeral. Do you remember that?
Yeah. They were there, and she died too.
Mm-hmm.
Who was the relative that lived in Flandreau that Mom used to talk about having to go sit with now and then? Maybe up by the Catholic Church somewhere.
Oh, Barb, I suppose, huh?
I suppose it was Aunt Ella.
She'd go and sit there.
I
She
know.
said
none of
she
us
did.
did.
Well, she told us a story or two about
Well,
that.
not Aunt. She maybe did somebody, but not Aunt Ella. She died before Grandpa did.
No. Well, maybe
She
it wasn't
died when
rel-
Nancy was a baby.
Maybe it wasn't relative then. Maybe it was some.
No, I have memories of everybody going up to the Indian school when Fern and Bob were there, and all of the guys, not
Fern
me,
and
I was a
Tom.
little kid. Yeah, where I say, yeah, Fern and Tom. When Fern and Tom were there, all of the guys going over to a gym and playing basketball.
Right.
And me sitting in the stands watching them. So those guys must have had a lot of fun together.
They did.
The uncles.
I don't know. I think Kenneth got acquainted over there some way through Beebe. Through Beebe knew the coach. It was Bartlett was up there at the time, and
So Tom Murphy wasn't there then?
yeah, he was always there. But they got into the gym, and some of the Indian boys would come and play too, and they had a real good time. And it just got to be a Sunday thing if we went over to Dad's.
Do you remember meeting Tom the first time? Tom Murphy?
I think Bethany met him before I did.
Can't remember. We had lots of fun with them. They loved to play bridge.
They played bridge together.
We played back and forth probably twice a week or something. They come over, we come over.
And Fern was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
Wasn't
and we
she?
played. And I remember one night why it must have been Andrew. What kid would it have been?
I think it was Andrew.
Anyhow, she came down and she just first found out that he was an Indian. No, he's been there just all the time. We never talked about it. Well, we lived across
Oh,
the
we
Indians.
knew
and
it.
Indians, they were just
like we
everybody
were.
else. And he said, she said, can I bring my friends in to see this Indian? So she brings the whole group in there. Oh, so Tom wished he had known it ahead of time. He said, I'd have put on an act like they'd never forget. Doesn't it sound like him doing it too?
Yeah. I remember him having a good sense of humor.
Yeah,
He did, he had. One night, I worked for Fernie on Thursdays for, I don't know, a long time. And I went over there in the morning and she'd tell me what she wanted me to do and bake some bread and all that kind of thing. And I usually done about 5 o'clock. And she'd get off about 4:30. I'd try to be done by that time. So we'd be visiting. And in that one house, there was I can see that couch sitting against the south wall and Tom coming in from the east and walking up the steps. He come in the door that night and he said, "How?" Just like that. She and I tell you, we laughed, all three of us laughed, and it was so funny, because it's something you didn't expect. How?
Dad always talked very highly of Tom.
Yeah,
like in the
Dad
war.
liked him too. They really liked Tom. Tom was a good guy.
Dad talked a lot about the war and Uncle Flash before and after the war, and visiting him in the hospital and realizing how he had changed. I mean, you think about a lot of young people going through the trauma of 1940
went
to
through a lot.
44 or 5. It had to be pretty difficult. And then all the family back here. Kathy's mom and dad did the same thing. They didn't see each other for 2 years. So,
I think Flash went through an awful lot that we never knew about.
You don't always think about out to your house, I think it was, and Harold Drew was there, and I said that Bud hadn't been on land for a year. And he told Blanche afterwards, isn't that a shame that she believes that?
Who said that?
As a friend of Kenneth's family.
Yeah.
He didn't have very good family life, and he stayed a lot of time with Kenneth's folks, and his name was Harold Giroux. We went to a lot of dances
No,
together, a lot of
fun
shows
too.
together, dances, that kind of stuff. And did you date him?
No, I never did.
I remember coming home one day when I was a 6th grader or 5th
He asked
grader,
me a lot of times.
and Mom was standing in the kitchen, and there was silverware hanging from strings all over the kitchen. And I said, "What happened here?" And she said, "Kenneth's been here." And it made no sense to me that Uncle Kenneth would come and do that kind of prank.
Well,
He'd do a lot of things.
and he tied their they break and the clutch and all together. He tied them together one time we were in Flanders. This is her car, and she wasn't home, of course, and so he went and tied that together. Oh, they were real good friends. Kenneth and Faye were,
He did a lot of
I
things.
guess, they're impossible. That's the way it was. One day, Grandpa's funeral, I'll never forget it.
What's Grandpa now?
A sales.
Okay.
We were out the cemetery, and we were just newly married, of course. He died in July, we were married in May. And so I turned around and I said, "I'd like you to meet my husband," and what do you know? He wasn't there. And in the meantime, Faye had said to him, "I hate these things, let's go." And he went.
It's a good story.
It's a good story, and that's exactly what happened. So, and then I know when Bobby was in the hospital, we went down there lots and lots of times, and they would walk together and talk together. And they were real good friends. And when we were courting, she'd write letters to him in my mail, and he always called her Ole, and I got a Christmas thing in there, in by his picture, that got Ole on it.
Who started that?
In her
Fayola?
writing.
Who started that?
I don't
I
know.
remember
Ole
that.
Faye is what they called her.
Fayola, I thought.
Yeah,
it was.
Fayola,
Yeah.
Ole Faye. And she signed her name Ole, and I got that in there on his picture.
I've never heard that story before either.
Huh?
I've never heard that story before.
Yeah, they were real good friends. Jean was really left out. Jean had a hard time.
Well, she had surgery when
She
she
had
was a
St.
little
Vitus
girl.
dance for
But
one
when she
thing.
was about 3, she had her appendix out. didn't
Yeah.
she? I remember her in that crib out in the waiting
Yeah,
place.
that's
that
right.
She left in that.
No, she was a sickly child, really.
Yeah, she had
And
nerve
then
problems.
losing her mother when she was, in the 3rd grade. Faye, I think, was in the 2nd grade. They moved to Flanders. And, I thought about that many, many times. The 6 kids.
How long did we live over there? What year did we move? 33? Or
Yeah, with the first crop was 33.
Was it? And then she died in 37. Very
And
long, wasn't
she didn't have a chance either. Richard and Jim either.
It's tough not to have a parent.
I'm trying to think of a question to ask about back when Bobby was hurt. But I have such vivid memories about it, I probably don't even know, I don't even know what to ask.
Oh,
But
yeah.
the family
We all
came-
went down there.
I can still see your dad coming to the house that day, Coleman, or your mother, and both of them were there. And they said, told us what happened, and they said, well, let's get ready, we're gonna go ride Sioux Falls. He said, too late, he won't live. So he's going, but we said, yes, we
We
are.
went.
So we got ready and all of us went.
We went down there, and we
And I
stayed
can
the
remember
night.
Doctor,
Odie was with him.
yeah, but Dr.
Church.
Church said, no, I've done everything I can, it's up to the good Lord. Remember when he said that?
Yeah.
Everybody came out that
And,
night.
and Dr. Odie was there.
Mhm.
And, no, I remember just as plain as day that night.
That accident for some reason, and I don't know, I don't know whether I can say I would be this way, but I remember recently sitting in a funeral in Flandreau, and a fellow that I didn't even know very well, what happened to be there, and he stopped me, how's Bobby doing? I'll never forget that day of that accident, you know. I mean, we're talking about now back 1966, you know, and
Yeah, right.
it's just funny how it just impacted people, and it was such a prolonged period of time where Mom was
yeah.
in Sioux Falls.
But you know, he was a joy to so many people like in Colton. You've got such fond memories of Bobby.
You know?
I think so.
Well, he doesn't have
Roger
any fond
Fritz
memories
still
back
thinks the
right
world
now.
about
No,
me.
but I
Roger.
no, but I mean people
Yeah,
that
yeah, I know.
um,
Yeah,
Well,
Roger.
it's one of those things where you know he has had a lot of fun in his life. It's not, obviously not good now, but he's had a lot of fun and he's brought a lot of joy, so you just have to appreciate
But
that.
he,
And he and my dad were good for each other
he
those last
really
years.
taught us a lot. He may never have known, but what he's taught us about being disabled and all this kind of thing, and how Faye, I admire her yet to this day, how she took over and she said, oh, you can do that. You can do that. I could heard her say more than once. And I remember when Beth Lamb went over to one time, of course that was years later, and he said, Mom, crabby.
yeah.
He went downstairs.
I remember when right after he had been home and he was able to do a little walking, he had his white football helmet on, and we were coming home from Flandreau, and he was a little mouthy, and Mom said, I'm not going to take that. If you want to walk home, just keep talking like that. And he said, okay, walk home. She stuffed the car and he out and he walked home. So and he was down a half mile or so,
Yeah.
wasn't very long distance.
I remember.
I did want to ask one thing about the Dust Bowl years. Did you have any recollection of that?
I sure do. Do you?
Not much.
I remember a Sunday. I'm sure it was a Sunday. And we had the lamps lit. We were at the we were over here at Pettigrew's. And we had the lamps lit, and it was so dirty outside, and the curtains were just full. I can remember that just as plain as day.
Being dark.
And I was old enough or young enough that you wondered what was going on, really.
What was that?
and-
30 what? What was that?
Well, it had to be 30
31, 32, 33, 34 over the years.
Somewhere in there. Yeah.
But I remember that as plain as anything. But I don't remember the reaction of the folks or anything, but I remember the day.
Do you remember much about the politics back then?
Well,
FDR
Grandpa was
and
a
all
great
that?
politician.
And he was a Democrat.
Oh, yes. Could do no wrong. He was great on fighting too. Jack Dempsey was really a great. And he would, when we got the radio, and he would get his ear up there to listen to the fights. Remember that?
He did those things, but he always
Yeah.
liked them.
He liked that. And
He always had candy in his pocket. See, when our folks went down, we stayed home, we got fruit. When they came back, always brought us fruit. We never got candy, but Grandpa had pink
pink
and
peppermints.
peppermint things and whites, some to it. He always had them in his pocket, so he got a treat once. So. Not
And
real
Jim,
often, but-
Jim spent a lot of hours on Grandpa's lap,
Mhm.
and played with Grandpa's watch. When that's about all
Yeah,
he
yeah,
had.
we'll get that watch or whatever happened to
Oh,
that.
Jim took it all apart and pounded it up. And anyway, one of the first, Grandpa's favorite word was shit, and Jim couldn't talk very well. He'd say, "Oh, fit." I can remember that when he started to talk, "Oh, fit."
What about Grandma Barbara?
Oh dear.
I mean,
She was a great cook.
She did
That's-
lots of nice things, really. She
that's a
was so
plus.
good to you kids too. Every grandkid
That's
that went
right.
there.
Now, she told me she was going to put me in the washing machine if I stopped cutting the bed.
Oh, is that
Scared that
right?
devil
she
out
told
of me.
me that I reminded her of Uncle Jimmy.
Was that right?
I was like, oh.
I didn't know her too well, but she fed us She fed Dad, she kept his house clean, and she washed his clothes, and
She saved us a lot of work.
that was it. She had no personality, I don't think, but maybe we didn't give her a chance either, I don't know. Of course, we were over in Coleman, how could we give her a chance?
I don't know.
Okay, tell us one story about Aunt Bethany that she can't interfere with. Some story when you were kids.
Well, it must have been
She must have been perfect, I
Can't think of
guess.
anything. Yeah, I can't even think of anything now.
No, she dated before I did, I know that. She went to dances before I did.
Oh, I'm not sure about that.
I
But
am.
Can't before.
I am. I know you were going to dances in Ward before I ever.
Well.
Yeah, you went with Weezy.
That's something
you
you'd
went
make
I
with
wasn't
Weezy.
dating because we went with the Andy Weiss. If you went home.
Well, you might have went.
Home with
I'm
them.
not saying you dated
Oh.
anybody up there, but you
Yeah,
went.
Yeah, that's right.
She did too.
Doesn't seem like the type of thing she'd make up.
No,
Did Uncle Richard and Uncle Jimmy do any sports in high school? Well, they didn't go to high
They
school,
didn't.
so they didn't do any of that.
I really don't remember much about it, Mark. I knew when he got in trouble. Dad never said much, and he got in trouble, and that both of them
Went to
did,
service,
of course, and then he went to service. I was surprised when he married Elaine because I didn't even know he was going with anybody. Were you? And Jimmy went with everybody, I think.
Was Jackie from Flanders? She was.
Yeah.
Jewett.
Well, how would you describe your relationship with your brothers? I mean, did it change as you got older?
Well,
Did
the
you ever
thing-
felt like you really knew
I
them?
was gone.
So you don't.
I left home when Richard was like in the 8th grade. Now I don't remember the other years. We finally got Dad to go. Dad always butchered pork, but then Mother was told not to eat it because she had ulcers. But so she started using the Crisco and that kind of stuff. But I remember cooking for silo men.
For what kind of man?
And fill the silo.
When they filled the silo,
Oh,
and
silo
then
men.
and then I remember baking. I remember very faintly baking the pies too. Well, of course we did that. I was there. Bethany got married before I did, so I was there to do it. So then somebody from Minnesota came, Violet or somebody came down, and she said, "Well, who made the pies?" And Dad said under his breath, "Blanche." I do remember that.
You know, this is probably a hard thing to answer too, but do you ever wonder what are some of the main things you learned from your parents? I mean, I think about that with my parents, and I had them many, many, many years, and I never moved away. You know, do you think about that? I mean, you think they really didn't go to church, they weren't around that long.
They're really loving, though.
The
They're
schooling
Loving,
thing, you know, they were loving.
And
And how they
nobody-
got along with people.
Nobody ever hollered at anybody, you know, and those
No.
things.
Yeah. But think about the things, how important God has been in your lives, and,
Oh,
and,
yeah.
and
Yeah,
our
I didn't
families.
even,
I mean,
didn't even know it. And didn't even know it. When I went to Muscatine, I'll tell you one thing. I thought of this afterwards. Dad and I went to Muscatine to see Mother when she was down there, and we got off on the wrong road, and we almost got killed. Really, we come down off the hill, and
Icy. wasn't
the
it?
ice twirled the car around like this, and we stopped right there. Well, Dad looked out his side, and he said, "I can't get out this side. We'll get out the other side." So he and I went and got a hotel. He knew where he was. He'd been there before. And the next morning, when we saw Mother, he said, do you know what stopped the car last night?" And of course, I didn't know. And I think I was 16 or 17, 16 maybe. And he said, "There was a few strands of grass." Now, if the Lord wasn't looking after you then, and you should have thought about it, which I didn't, he did that night. Otherwise, we both gone down, got killed. That's no getting around to that. That was a ravine straight down. And I remember, and we walked across a swinging bridge to get where we were supposed to go, and it creaked and creaked. And he said to me, "I'll walk across first." And I didn't even know the danger then. That's how
Peeking
naive I was, and he knew what was going on, but I didn't, because he said, afterwards I learned that metal it was put together with wire might snap when it got real cold. I never heard it, but maybe it didn't.